What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Water Cooler Talk. My name is Caleb Turner. I'm a sports writer at KSL.com, and I'm joined once again by Jackson Payne to close out the month of March. March Madness, technically, I mean, I guess the tournament's not over, but the month of March and a lot of the madness has ended. April 1st is on Tuesday. But we brought Jackson on to recap what he was able to witness covering BYU on their run to the Sweet 16 and actually traveling with them to both Denver and good old Newark, New Jersey.
It
So
is old, but it's not good.
yeah, good. It's old but not good. Oldie but not a goodie. So we brought him in to do a bit of a travel log, you might say. Similar, not dissimilar. I know you shouted out Bill Simmons earlier. Not dissimilar to what Ryan Russillo does sometimes with his travel logs on the Bill Simmons podcast. So we brought Jackson in for his travel log.
I was gonna
Uh,
say, am I the Rosillo of this podcast with just how often I'm on here? You know,
pretty much. Which I don't I
I
don't know. I don't know.
actually came away more impressed with Newark, New Jersey.
Tell us about it.
Oh no, not at all. What a
Well,
terrible place.
do you want to start with the most recent first, or do you want to start at the beginning and go to the most recent?
Let's start at the beginning, just
Okay.
because let's save. I feel like let's start with the good, and
Yeah,
then
that's fair. That's
kind of
fair.
phase into the bad, and then wrap it up with the bittersweet. You know.
Right, right.
Yeah, I got to go to Denver. Got to make that awesome drive out. Hit a snowstorm on the way, and it took me like 3 extra hours to get there, which wasn't fun. But
Yeah, see,
Denver.
for those of you who are saying, "Oh, he gets," they're paying for his flights to go all over and cover this BYU team. Jackson is putting hard-earned miles on that CRV,
Oh
and
yeah,
he's trekking through the mountains. He's making that. I don't know if you did trek a Pioneer Trek as a youngin. I didn't, but you're having that opportunity now. You went through the mountain pass and you survived. So it's not all easy. It's not all first class flights here for our guy. He really put in the work and went out to Denver. So uh,
yeah.
well
Put
done
put
there.
that shoulder to the wheel.
Exactly. Push along.
Pushed along. Had some good podcasts to listen to on the way out. But yeah, it was a cool trip. Denver's a cool city if you've never been. Highly recommend. Stayed in one of the Denver hotels of all time. That was interesting. But yeah, BYU fans took over Denver, as you can imagine, from the just the proximity and that VCU matchup. That was I told people the whole week whoever won between BYU and VCU was going to end up beating Wisconsin.
Mm,
That turned out to be the case. But that VCU matchup, I mean, that was everything. Like, I think the biggest thing, obviously, Kevin Young made the tournament year one at BYU. That was such a huge feat, considering having to kind of restart a program essentially with Mark Pope leaving, recruiting all the key players to come back, bringing new guys in, having to build a staff out of thin air. So to go to the tournament year one is a major feat. Winning a tournament game for the first time in 13 years for BYU would have been like the all-time slam dunk. The
mm.
fact that they got to the Sweet 16 is fantastic. I mean, this is a top three season in BYU history now. It has to be
Yeah.
because I mean, they went to the Elite Eight once, which was before the three-point line in college basketball. So it's kind of a
Crazy.
mixed news, right? And then they had the Jimmer year, which kind of ended controversially with the whole Brandon Davies thing that we don't have to rehash. But I mean, that's probably number one just because of how widespread Jimmer mania
Mm,
was. You could make an argument that this is kind of on par with that Danny Ainge year. This team was definitely, I mean, that 81 team was really good. I mean, they had Steve Trumbo, Greg Kite, a lot of great talent. I think Fred Roberts was on that team too. So like you had some legit NBA guys on that team. But this year's team, I mean, so much fun to watch. One of the best offenses in college basketball. Got to the Sweet 16. First win over a single digit seed for BYU since 91, I
mm.
think. Which is crazy, right? Like we romanticize that Jimmer Sweet 16 run, but they beat Wofford and then they beat Gonzaga. So not
Right.
not exactly. And this wasn't like prime Gonzaga. This is like down year Gonzaga.
Early,
So
early. Yeah.
so that Denver trip was really cool. Just kind of watching BYU exercise those March demons.
Mm.
You could tell. I mean, I was sitting in front of President Reese, the university president, Tom Homo,
Oh wow.
kind of the BYU VIP section, right? Like Jimmer was there, Danny Ainge was there, Ryan Smith is there, and there's just kind of this nervousness, right? Like everyone was just kind of there was a lot of anxiety just going in because it's like, all right, BYU's a six seed. Every time BYU's a six, the 11 wins for some reason. Like it was just is that it just kind of March is just such a weird time, and VCU, that was one of the trendier upsets people were picking. So a lot of anxiety, but then kind of by the end of that game, it just turned in the whole weekend turned into BYU festival essentially, where BYU fans went to that Wisconsin game. President Reese, all his posse came back and so much more relaxed. It was like, all right, house money now, have fun, just make a statement against Wisconsin, and then they beat Wisconsin, and it's great. And so, kind of to wrap up the basic synopsis, the Denver portion of the trip was really fun. I felt you could
Yeah.
kind of you got the full emotional roller coaster of the existential dread of is BYU destined to just be terrible in March forever, and then go advance out of the first weekend, which BYU never does. That Wisconsin game was so much fun. That was one of the best games of the tournament. Watt Mag, BYU legend for that stop. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the Tides, what you saw in Denver is definitely that turning of the tides
Mm.
where BYU doesn't get punked anymore. BYU's a force in March. I wrote about this in a column, but Gonzaga way back when was a school no one really knew about. It was just John Stockton, right? And so they went to an Elite Eight in '99, and then they're just a March staple from here
Yeah.
on out. So I feel like BYU's kind of got that same trajectory now, where it's like, all right, AJ DeVance is coming, more NBA guys are coming, Kevin Young's just getting started. BYU is now a team that you pencil into the second weekend without hesitation from now on. So Denver was definitely where that kind of took flight. And so that was really cool watching kind of the weight of so much March PTSD and so many March flops kind of melting away from a fan base. And then going into Newark where, just being in the Sweet 16 is so cool and thinking, all right, fans being like, we can go toe to toe with Alabama. And obviously that went a certain way that we'll get to, but just the fact that BYU was there, I mean, I kind of had to like being there, actually getting to fly that time was pretty cool. Not definitely didn't want to take that for granted, but yeah, just being there was cool, man. Just seeing all the national media, John Fanta, the face of college basketball's there,
And another John, John Heater,
and John Heater was there. Thanked
with
him for
with his tots.
thanked him for his work in Monster House and Surfs Up. Uh, this is a
Yeah,
true story. I did go up and
because that's what he's known for.
I did make a point of going up to him and saying thank you for Monster House.
He was there for the tots. The tots are from one thing.
I just in my mind, Monster House is slept on just anyway because
It
it looks
is, yeah,
cute. But I wanted to be. There's no
different.
anybody has ever gone up to him and
Yeah,
been, yo, Monster House.
yeah,
It's got to be Napoleon Dynamite or like bench warmers.
right.
Not, yeah, Monster House and Surfs Up, and he looked at me. He looked at me like he was having a vision. He was like, "What is going?"
Aw,
But
that's
yeah,
so sweet.
he's yeah, what a gem.
Was he
So
was he a nice guy?
nice guy. Yeah, a
That's good.
little got some Napoleon in him.
Yeah, of course.
But I do too. So we all
Yeah.
have a little dynamite in us.
Who among us?
Who am I? But yeah, I mean, it was cool watching BYU's program change before our eyes.
Hmm.
To kind of wrap up what I've been saying, watching so much heartbreak in the past kind of get buried and realize that kind of had BYU has legs going forward, and there's a future to this program, and they could be at the table as one of the best programs in college basketball. And Kevin Young's just getting started, and seeing AJ DeBanza there in Newark and seeing all the national people raving about BYU, and at the beginning of that Alabama game, watching BYU go to toe before Mark Sears went nuclear. I mean, it was just like, wow, like this is not your father's BYU. This is not a team that loses at Pacific in February. This is a team that's gonna make some noise in March. So really cool experience. Glad I got to be a little bit a part of it. And next year, I mean, I'm sure we'll get to this later, but if you can retain most of this current team, keep Kaba, you bring in AJ, you keep Richie, maybe you keep Dallin as your backup point guard, and you probably have to upgrade in that spot. Keep Dawson Baker, and then you bring in a couple high impact portal guys with the tournament experience that this core already has. Then you add these elite players around them. Why not Final Four next year, right? Like there's definitely a path to be had. So the future is so bright. Very very excited for the Kevin Young era.
Yeah, and I know that this has been talked about a lot already after that Alabama game, but I mean, BYU they played a great game, scored 88 points. The lines weren't really very dissimilar from the previous games. Richie Saunders 25 points, Yegor Demon 7 assists, right? Like they kind of pretty consistent numbers, but they went up against this historic Alabama performance. And if it had been just about any other team or any other performance by a team, let's say, that 88 points probably gets you into the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
And we're talking about an even deeper run. I think that BYU has only done once, like you mentioned, with Danny Ainge back in the 80s. So, kind of crazy, just like how those things happen. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was, I'm always like so fascinated by, we talk about BYU exercising these demons, and getting their first win in 13 year, first Sweet 16 in 13 years. Um, but like, I'm always curious how a team goes from like mediocrity or just having the same thing happen over and over and over again to suddenly overachieving or seemingly overachieving, breaking through, whatever you want to call it, and like what the difference is, right? Like for example, the teams that I'm covering right now in soccer, Real Salt Lake and Utah Royals, not great. Just like it, low mediocrity, losing a lot of games, like just not breaking through, not scoring a lot of goals, not having kind of like those impact moments that you want to see from your favorite team, not making a deep postseason run, all those kinds of things, right? And what I'm coming down to is like, is it as simple as Kevin Young got a lottery pick recruit in Yegor Demin? And that is enough to like bring you back up to the big leagues where all these other teams have draft prospects and BYU just didn't. I mean, Jimmer obviously was, but like since Jimmer, and even Jimmer was kind of a anomaly because he didn't come in as an NBA prospect, played 4 years, which you don't really see very much for an NBA prospect. And so it's like, is it really that simple that like BYU is just competing on a different level with those higher programs now?
Yeah, I think honestly, the one BYU is such a unique case because BYU's history is so different from so many other schools.
Yeah.
The way BYU operates is different from other schools. And I really think when Mark Pope went to Kentucky, the head decision makers, both on the university and the athletic side at BYU got together and they said, this is our chance to kind of reinvent our program.
Mm,
We don't have to be kind of a gimmicky West Coast obscure school. We can have a seat at the table with these big time schools. And so I feel like the Kevin Young era is just it's almost like BYU became a new program with the influx of NIL,
yeah.
with the ability to recruit these these highly rated prospects and kind of turning BYU into I mean, I remember our friend Steve Pierce telling us BYU, the way it was run at the time, wasn't going to be able to ever recruit top talent. And so
Yeah.
BYU, as a result, had to kind of they had to run the Grinnell system where you full court press the whole game and you play with the fastest pace possible and chuck up 43s a
Mm,
game.
mm,
And they kind of lean into that a little bit with the Mark Pope year in the Big 12. And it worked. And so BYU, as fun as that team was, there wasn't real NBA talent aside from
yeah.
Jack Robinson, who's still like a fringe second round pick, if that.
Right.
I mean, Ali Khalifa is he's throwing dimes at he's throwing dimes as a center, right? Like they're running the weird five out, and he got this massive Egyptian dude just chucking dimes. Like it's just like it was so gimmicky. And if they didn't hit their threes, you weren't going to beat them. And then you contrast that with VCU, and VCU guarded the perimeter. VCU was such an elite defensive team, and they guarded the perimeter so well. And so BYU went down low to Foose, and Foose
Yeah.
destroyed VCU. They had no answer for Foose and Kaba. And then the guards, and then like Jaeger wanted to get downhill. So I really think what happened is it's a whole new program with Kevin Young. It's kind of hard to compare past results.
Yeah.
The process is so different. And I really think that clean slate allowed Kevin Young to go like BYU now goes like in the past, you go into March Madness and you're expecting the worst from within the program, or you're thinking about all the times you've been punked in the past by a UCLA or a Duquesne or who I mean, how many other random BYU weird March moments have there been, right? Or a Marquette or someone like that. And so
Yeah.
I feel like Kevin Young could just go in with a clean slate and be like, look, we're better than VCU. We can beat them for these reasons. Let's just go out and do it. And then once they finally got that win, you could just being around that team in the locker room, just the monkey off their back, the weight off their shoulders. It was like night and day from the previous time. Like they went into VCU all business, just so dead set on flipping the script, and that was kind of their shared vision and their shared focus was changing this narrative and breaking through. And then when they went into Wisconsin, it was like you're playing with house money, and it kind of freed them
Yeah.
to play so much more loose and so much more free, which allowed them to knock off a 3 seed in Wisconsin. And so, I mean, it was just a tremendous. I mean, Kevin Young, as great of a tactician as he is, I mean, his out of timeout plays are so fantastic, and their offensive attack was so efficient this year. But the motivational aspect of him, I feel like you don't really see it in the media. I mean, the way he talks is so straightforward, and there's not a lot of pizzazz. It's just straight ball essentially. And but in the clubhouse, like behind closed doors, the man can like fire you up. He can get in your head and get something more out of you. And it's a real testament to him and his staff. And I just really think going in knowing, hey, this is not the same BYU team. Our process is different. We attack things differently. That really helped flip the script and kind of it's like the end of Aladdin when Genie gets freed, right? Like it's a whole new world for BYU basketball now. And like I said earlier, like you kind of have to start just penciling BYU out of the first weekend every year because they've proven they can do it and they're only going to get better from here.
Yeah, we talk about this kind of NBA style of team of basketball, getting NBA level talent. And one of those players that was projected to, potentially be an NBA prospect, Cannon Catchings, heading into the transfer portal. That's kind of the big news. I know it's only been a few days since BYU's out of the tournament, but already this transfer portal is kind of churning. And he saw his role reduced as BYU got better. Cannon Catchings' minutes went the other direction, which I think is really interesting. So it seems like he might not be at BYU next year, but like you mentioned, they get another NBA talent in AJ DeBonsa, possibly the number one pick in the NBA draft. So like it doesn't really get much better than that. But do you think, with Catchings leaving, how bad of a thing is that? And can Kevin Young replace him with yet another, NBA level talent?
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad at all. I think Catching started the first 15 games of the season and was averaging about 25 minutes a game in those contests. And then in the last 17 games of the season, coming off the bench, he averaged 11 minutes a game.
Mm,
And he had his moments, he flashed, but at the same time, he just never really lived up to that potential of a late first round pick that he kind of came in as. And, just watching him, his body language is never great. There was didn't seem to be a lot of connection with him and the other players on the team. I don't want to like spitball and create something out of nothing, but it
right.
never seemed like a great fit, right? And so I feel like his defensive deficiency uh led Kevin Young to kind of look other directions, and it really became when they took Cannon Catchings out of the starting lineup and put Mawat Mag in, BYU's season took a 180, and Mag. I mean, Richie Saunders is the MVP this year for BYU, but I'd say Mag is number two because the defense that he provided and the clutch shooting and the stability in that starting lineup and replacing Catchings was an absolute direct factor in BYU's turnaround in midseason. And so I think, honestly, maybe this is a blue goggle take. I'm an alum, so I have some of those sometimes, right? We're who among us, but
How dare you?
how dare I? But I really feel like the Cannon catching his experience is a net positive for BYU and Kevin Young in particular. One, because he still had his moments, like he contributed. He basically won that Baylor game for BYU when he wouldn't miss a shot.
Yeah.
And I really feel like as Kevin Young kind of transitions to the college game, he's never had to recruit these elite athletes before.
Mm,
And so I think it's important for him to I think it's important for him to miss on one of those guys early
mm.
to kind of refine his evaluation process in the future. Because Cannon Catchings, as talented as he is, and he's an NBA guy, he's gonna figure it out eventually. I'm gonna go ahead and guess he's going to UNC, as others are saying. He went in with a do not contact label, so he knows where he's going, it looks like.
Mm.
I really feel like for whatever reason, just wasn't a fit at BYU, and what they asked him to do wasn't what he wanted to do, and BYU was trying to figure out its identity, and it kind of stumbled onto something mid-season, and he didn't really fit that.
Yeah.
And so now that BYU has this set identity as a team and as a program, now Kevin Young can go out and try to find guys that fit that,
Mm.
but also like dealing with these 17, 18-year-old recruits out of high school is such a different experience than dealing with like a Chris
Right.
Paul or Kevin Durant. And so I feel like this is a great experience for Kevin Young to learn, to refine his pitch, to refine his evaluation process, to kind of learn. I mean, just this year was a learning experience for Kevin Young. A successful season, like I said, was just making the tournament. The fact that they went to the Sweet 16 and, gave Alabama an 88-point outing, obviously, historic shooting aside, maybe that's a toss up, who knows? But I mean, this was such a slam dunk season, and it's imagine when Happy learns how to putt, right? Imagine when Kevin Young really gets the hang of this college thing. Not to say that he hasn't, but like imagine when he's in year 3 or 4 or 5 and he's really established and he's not learning as much as he is kind of strengthening what he already knows. And so the Cannon Catchings experience, it's that you never want to see a kid with that much hype and that much potential flame out. And hopefully it doesn't get to the point where they're saying things in the media and it becomes this ugly thing. But I really think it helps Kevin Young kind of realize what he's looking for specifically going forward. And I mean, they've had at least 100 players reach out to them in the portal already. I mean, they just got this guy from Washington, the French kid,
Yeah.
Diamond, I want to say, Dominique. I
You
mean,
know, I'm a huge fan of French basketball players.
hey, it's the new basketball mecca, right?
Yeah.
So this kid Dominique they got from University of Washington. He was playing for the Ivory Coast team. He's playing professionally. It looked like in France. He went to Washington, redshirted. He joined midseason. I mean, he's an elite 3-and-D guy at his ceiling, it looks like. So he can kind of fill that mag role, but
Mm.
maybe offer you a little bit more on the offensive end. I don't know if you saw the highlights they put out, but it was kind of sick. Like he
Yes,
looked.
very sick.
And so just because you miss on cannon catchings doesn't mean you can't find these diamond in the rough guys, maybe in unexpected places like Dominique or get these agent Abanza types. I mean, there's a lot to be had, and so I really think this does help Kevin Young going forward. I actually came away more impressed with Kevin Young.
Thank you, Rosillo. I appreciate that. Well, with that Alabama loss, unfortunately, March Madness has come to an end for all teams in the state of Utah. But postseason college basketball has not come to an end for all teams in the state of Utah because your running Utes, the Utah men's basketball team, has accepted an invitation and will be participating in the College Basketball Crown in
Oh,
Las Vegas, our favorite city. That starts tomorrow. So, March, we got one more day of March.
this
And
is March.
the March Madness will live on tomorrow at 1 p.m. on FS1. That's Mountain Time. As Utah takes on Butler, both teams, I believe, with losing records. So not exactly what you want there. But nonetheless, some postseason basketball for you diehards, you sickos who want to continue to watch some college basketball. And can't wait for the Final Four, which is in my home city of San Antonio next week. All chalk on the Riverwalk is what they were saying on the broadcast, which is a pretty fun little slogan. But I don't know, just real quick, thoughts on all the number one seeds making to the Final Four. Is that boring, or does it mean that we're getting like higher quality basketball?
I think it can be boring at times, but if there was ever a year to go full chalk for the Final Four, I feel like this was the year.
Mm.
Because one, this is the best Duke team of either of our lifetimes. Cooper Flag is the real deal. He's kind of the story of the tournament. It'd be really cool to see him. I mean, you can't really hate this Duke team. Shire's a great coach. He's a likable guy. Cooper
Whoa,
Flag,
whoa, 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 whoa! I think a lot of people can still hate Duke.
I know, but like I'm just saying, like this is a very different Duke dynamic.
Okay, okay,
Like the ACC isn't great, but they've kind of proven that even though their conference wasn't great, they are still the real deal.
yeah.
There's a lot. Cooper Flag is so selfless. It's a very team like it's
He's fun. I like him.
Cooper. I mean, watching him in person was awesome. I
Yeah,
like Shire. Um, so you have like your superstar, and then you have a Houston that's so elite defensively. You have Auburn, that's a fun team.
yeah.
Um, and then who am I missing?
Florida.
Florida. Yeah, I mean, like, so you have these are four like the four best teams. They all have great storylines. The coaches are interesting. The players are interesting. There's a bona fide star in Cooper Flag already. Like, I think it's compelling. If this was another year and it was just kind of like four random one seeds, like
Mm.
I
Gonzaga.
yeah, like I think this is these were the one seeds to where it was the best possible option. I mean, look, I picked St. John's to win it. I'm mad. I'm a Crab Five guy. That whole thing with Kevin Willard makes me mad. It would have been fun if they made a Final Four. Maybe they would have if the coach hadn't left, but I digress. But aside from that, I mean, it's chalk is no fun, but this is a great like consolation prize, right? Like, all right, you get the by far the four best teams, all with cool storylines, with cool styles of play, a
Yeah.
chance for Cooper Flag, who could be the face of the NBA at some point, to have a great March moment. It'll be fun. So, and then as far as the crown goes, you know, I'm dying to see these ratings come out when they do, because this is such a weird idea. But Utah, I feel like it can go one of two ways. Either Utah will flame out immediately because they're so checked out. They haven't played in 2 weeks.
Who's their coach going to be in Vegas?
Yeah, they're ready for the Jensen era to begin. Kind of like, all right, let's get this over. or they could just do the Dan Monson Long Beach
Oh,
thing last year and just
yeah.
keep winning. And it's like, all right, like you could just be getting in the portal and trying to figure out your roster, but no, let's win instead. So it's they're either gonna go way farther than they should or just die immediately. Like they're either gonna win like at least 2 games or win no games, you know? So but hey, who would have thought the Utah Running Utes would be the last team playing postseason basketball in the state of Utah? Good for them.
Only in 2025 and only in Vegas. That's all I'll say about that.
And it's so poetic that the Pac-12, the former Pac-12 darling, returns to its beloved hometown of Vegas.
Exactly, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned the Maryland coach though, because I did see a graphic that 8 head coaches who made the NCAA tournament are already on new teams,
Yeah.
which is insane.
Not happy, Bob. The Maryland thing is I got thoughts on that, but you know.
Yeah, well, and one of them also. Wow, my screen just went super blue. Sorry, so my face is all like Ryan Gosling and Blade Runner looking. But, um, yeah, they and then one of them was VCU. Their coach going to Virginia. So like, it's just crazy. Like the coaching carousel these days in college sports is just absolutely wild. I thought it was funny on the new NCAA football game, how they have like a whole segment. If you do the coach mode, like there's just a whole coaching carousel. It's literally called that segment where you're just like, all right, let's see where everybody goes. Like it's become this whole like free agency thing where it's like just as entertaining to see where these coaches go. I just don't see how that can be like a good thing long term sustainability wise for like for the sport to just to blame everything on the coaches and to have them changing every year. That doesn't seem good. And who knows? I mean, like I don't think Kevin Young would ever. I didn't want to really bring this up, but like for a guy like him who is so successful so early, like obviously he's gonna have a year with AJ. You don't want to leave before that or anything, but like in a year or two, who's to say? Like with just the way things happen in college sports now, like it just seems like you're looking for a coach every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it is nice to know that, Mark Pope always kind of seemed to be looking over his shoulder. He had interviews with other
Yeah.
jobs every offseason. Dave Rose, he had some interviews with other jobs. He had some schools reach out wanting to take him away from BYU. And so
And in football too with Kalani, like Washington, Oregon, like every other year, right? There was one in California too. Was it like UCLA or USC? Someone was looking at him in California too. But anyway,
and then Bronco, I mean, he interviewed for
yeah,
both jobs too and
yeah,
eventually left. So it's nice to know that BYU has a coach that seems to be a BYU lifer in that the only college he will ever coach at is BYU.
hmm,
Because he said that. He said the only college I ever considered making the move from the NBA for was BYU.
interesting.
It just feels like he's never going to have as good a situation than he does at BYU, where he has the combination of the alumni support, the fan support, the NIL support,
The last name,
the last name, playing in that league, kind of like he's been given the keys to the kingdom, and anything less seems like kind of a step down. And at the same time, you got to remember he's got young kids. Like
yeah,
he wanted some stability and just being in a place for a while. So I've said all along, I think he's gonna. It's he was given a 7-year contract. I think he's gonna
wow,
go I think he'll serve his contract and then go back to the NBA eventually, probably with the Jazz. Let's be honest, which would be really funny because all the conspiracy, tinfoil hat, whatever, just comes true. But it's nice to know that a Kevin Young is probably sticking around at BYU long term because I mean, look, I'm a Maryland fan. I've seen the coaching carousel. It sucks. It's not fun when you're a fan and uh at the end of the day, the whole Kevin Willard thing was so bizarre, and now that he's gone, I'm like relieved just because
hmm,
it like he was all in on the program, and maybe they can find someone who is. But it's not fun having to go. I mean, look at Utah State. Like obviously they've overcome it every year, but like it is no fun having to. I mean, trying to sell the Youngstown State head coach as your potential new guy, like that's not a fun experience every time. And so, um, yeah, I mean, it's nice to know BYU has a little bit of stability there. And then I can't imagine Alex Jensen wanting to leave Utah. I mean,
right, right.
because he could just go back to the NBA as well. I mean, maybe not knock on wood. I mean, the Utah situation is so unique, and obviously changes will have to be made for that to be on par with BYU and maybe get over the hump of where they're supposed to be as a program. But I mean, Alex Jensen's doing he's doing the alma mater fixer upper bid, right? So it's not like he's going to be lured away for more money elsewhere. It's going to take a little bit more than that. So it'll be interesting to see. I love the idea that the BYU Utah rivalry matters again
Mm.
in the Big 12, playing twice a year, and the idea that Alex Jensen might make Utah basketball relevant again. and those BYU Utah games matter standings wise, and maybe they're going after some of the same recruits at times. Like it'd just be fun for that to be a head to head battle and have a little more juice than just playing once a year, you know?
Well, there's like so many of these connections now between originally it was mostly between like the Jazz and BYU, I feel like with guys like Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith. But now you even go to like Alex Jensen, right? With I'm pretty sure he interviewed for the head coaching job at the same time that Will Hardy did with the
Oh yeah.
Utah Jazz. And then Hardy brought him on as an assistant for a year with the Jazz. So like so many connections there, and then you like not even mentioning the players like the possibility of Yegor Demon going to the Jazz, the possibility of AJ going to one of those teams as well. With where the Jazz are at, which is a great segue into unfortunately having to talk about the Jazz a little bit here, who have once again lost 5 in a row, lost 10 in a row, won one against your wonderful Wizards,
Right.
not of Oz, but of Washington D.C. Um, and
The
then they
Wizards of Oz would probably beat the Wizards of DC too. Let's be real.
Jeff Goldblum version, or I don't know.
Jeffrey Tambor version, the
There
Muppet.
we go. There we go. And so lost 10, won one, and have lost five once again. Um, Worst record in the league, best odds to get Cooper Flag, et cetera, et cetera. Like we've been saying this whole time, they've got one, two, three, 7 games left in the season. We are down to the wire here. And mid-May, I believe, is when the ping pong balls will be selected, and we will officially find out who has the number one pick. But up until then, it's looking like, you've lost 5 in a row. What's another 7 in a row to lose out on this season? They've got a bit of a road trip here, going to Charlotte, Houston, Indiana, Atlanta, before 2 more at home against Portland and the Thunder
In
to
other
close.
words, loss, 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 loss.
Exactly, exactly. So, it's all shaping up. It's all falling into place perfectly, as you might say, for the Jazz. It's not falling into place, unfortunately, for a team that is trying to do the opposite and make the playoffs, and that is the Utah Hockey Club, who also went on a bit of an unfortunate losing streak recently with 3 losses in a row. One of those in overtime, I should add, but did turn things around against a win today on Sunday on the road against the Chicago Blackhawks. However, with those consecutive losses and some wins by teams above them, it's not looking good for your clubbers to make the playoffs. The last time I heard, it was like a less than 1% chance to make the playoffs for the clubbers, which is not what you want to see. They've got 8 games left in their season. A nice little home stretch here, taking on Calgary, the LA Kings, Winnipeg, Seattle Kraken, Nashville Predators, as we head into April. So if you're looking for sports now that March Madness and college basketball are over, Jazz aren't looking too hot. Check out these clubbers, right? They're still fighting, still technically a chance, even if it is less than 1% to make the playoffs. So unfortunate there. I mentioned the RSL and Royals losses again. Just kind of a tough time for teams right now. After BYU made that run and lost, it's like where do fans in Utah turn for good news in sports right now? I don't know what the answer is.
Ted Lasso binge watch, I guess. I
Just
mean,
yeah, just rewatch Ted Lasso, I guess.
you hop into Fantasyland. I mean, if look, having now experienced the Cooper Flag show in person,
Yeah,
do whatever it takes, take whatever fine is necessary, get that guy, do whatever it takes to get that guy because that's the franchise changer. So, I mean, I've already said if whether the Jazz, the Wizards get him, they get me too. So, I hope it's the Jazz. I want to see great Jazz basketball in Utah. Cooper Flag in Utah just seems to make sense for one reason or another. And so maybe that would be awesome to finish with the best lottery odds and then go into May and have that. But I mean, it's dark times for sports in Utah, but the transfer portal will be fun watching Utah and BYU retool their rosters.
yeah.
Maybe
And the Salt Lake Bees.
and the Salt Lake Bees are back. Gonna go see my boy.
New stadium
I'll be
out
going there
in.
next week.
We've been calling it Daybreak. I think technically it's South Jordan. It's right there, kind of on the edge of South Jordan Parkway and Mountain View corridor.
By the mine.
Um, what was that?
It's by the I've driven past it. It's by the mines, kind of like it's
Oh,
out there.
the mines.
Yes, the children yearn for the mines.
And
That's
speaking of which, the Minecraft movie comes out this week.
you know who
Uh,
directed it, right?
Jared Hess, which it all comes full circle here, people. If you want a full circle podcast, look no further because we're talking John Heater, we're talking Jared Hess, we're talking Napoleon Dynamite.
We should do a John Heater rewatchables on this podcast.
That would be so fun. I'd be down. Jared Hess teaming back up with Jack Black from the Nacho Libre days, and
Oh,
Jack Black hosting Saturday Night Live for the first time since. Do you want to guess what year? You probably already know, but
2008.
2005.
It's been that long.
It's been 20 years since Jack Black hosted SNL.
He hosted before '05 as well, though.
Yeah, he did like three in a row. It was like '02, '03, and '05 or something like that.
Yeah, dang, I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah,
And then we get John Hamm after, right?
yeah, and John Hamm, exactly. Nice little run there.
What a run.
So the children yearn for the mines. Head out to the mines to check out the Salt Lake Bees out there on the west side of the valley. I saw some pictures. The new stadium looks cool. They're still working on it. Like it's gonna come down to the wire, I think
Yeah.
technically, but like from what I was seeing, the interior is pretty close. It looks nice. Like obviously you're not as close to the mountains, so you don't quite have the view that Smith's Ballpark had. But like every
Everything around it is an upgrade.
yeah, and like that's kind of what I mean. Everybody loves everything that's new, right? Like you want something that's new. So go
And
check
the
it out.
whole, remember the whole point of putting the ballpark there and moving them out of downtown is to hopefully get MLB into the city eventually. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. I mean, look, that's my personal Super Bowls if MLB comes to Salt Lake. And
Which there were some interesting developments there this week too, with the Millers potentially buying Real Salt Lake. So
yeah,
and the Millers are the ones that are trying to bring MLB here. There was talk about with that stadium land up there by the airport, by the Fair Park. You know, if MLB falls through, maybe they move the soccer stadium up there by the Fair Park. Who knows? I don't know. This is all speculation and kind of long termness, but
but America First Field is iconic.
yeah, but the issue is there's a possibility that MLS might go to a a fall spring schedule, and they would play through the winter. So you would need a roof probably,
Yeah,
in order to play games in Utah in like December and January. It's
this is
pretty
true.
much impossible at the other one. So
Maverick Center, baby.
yeah,
It just
which
it feels wrong that it's not Rio Tinto anymore because the Riot was the best name ever.
yeah, they've like tried to carry that on. Like they call they call the fan section the Riot still,
Mm.
but it just like doesn't really work because
Yeah.
it's not called that.
It's gonna like when the hockey club eventually becomes the Mammoth
Yeah.
and still call them clubbers. Like, look, as the creator
That's how
of
you know you're the OG.
as the creator of the term clubbers, it will be kind of hard to keep that going when there's an actual nickname.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
I'll manage. I came up with it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's kind of like when the Rock at BYU finally renames as the Abyss. Like
Oh,
Jackson's been trying to petition for years. So the almighty Brigham Young student section. It's got to happen.
never gonna happen. The Almighty just to bridge too far over the River Kwai.
Just like how they're never going to decide between blue or Royal or Navy. But
Don't get me started. We're just digging in all my op-eds from BYU back in the
yeah,
day.
yeah. Disneyland. You want to talk about Disneyland?
We'll talk.
Everyone, go read Jackson Payne's opinion editorial on Disneyland and BYU students. That's your homework for this week. We're running out of time here on this podcast, though, so we got to let you go, and we'll catch you guys next week.